Take my car, the janitor pleaded to the billionaire CEO as lightning cracked across the stormy sky, his trembling hands extending the keys that would reveal a conspiracy meant to end her life tonight. His desperate words hung in the rain-soaked air between them, a chasm of social divide bridged by the raw terror in his eyes that told her he knew something she didn't. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The rain fell in angry sheets, drumming against the glass facade of Langford Tower with relentless fury. Lightning split the darkening sky, casting the cityscape in harsh, momentary clarity before plunging it back into gloom. Aveline Langford stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her executive suite, watching the storm with detached interest, the weather matching her mood with uncanny precision. "Your car is ready, Ms. Langford." Her assistant's voice cut through her thoughts. "Thank you, Mitchell." She didn't turn around, her reflection in the glass revealing a woman of striking features. Dark hair pulled into an immaculate chignon, tailored charcoal suit embracing the contours of her slender frame. Her expression betrayed nothing of the turmoil that the impending meeting had stirred within her. In 30 minutes, she would be sitting across from the board of Northcrest Pharmaceuticals, ready to sign papers that would change everything. The merger had consumed 18 months of her life, countless sleepless nights, and more cups of coffee than she cared to remember. Tonight, it would be finalized. Lightning flashed again, followed by thunder that seemed to shake the very foundation of the building. She checked her watch, 7:42 p.m. The downtown streets would be a nightmare in this weather, but she couldn't be late. Not tonight. Gathering her briefcase, Aveline made her way to the private elevator that would take her directly to the underground parking garage. She mentally reviewed her talking points one last time, the elevator's descent marked only by the soft hum of machinery and the gentle sway beneath her feet. When the doors slid open, her driver was nowhere to be seen. "Where's Henderson?" she asked the security guard stationed near the elevator. "Called in sick, ma'am. Last minute. Your car's still being prepped." Aveline felt a flicker of irritation. "I need to be at the Northcrest building in 20 minutes. "I know, ma'am. We're working on it." She checked her watch again. 18 minutes now. Every second that ticked by was another drop of anxiety in her already overflowing cup. The sound of tires on wet concrete drew her attention as her black Mercedes sedan pulled up, its sleek body glistening under the garage lights. Aveline moved toward it, her heels clicking sharply against the concrete. The replacement driver was unfamiliar to her older, with silver hair visible beneath a standard chauffeur's cap. She stepped out and reached for her door handle. "Ma'am, don't get in the car," the voice came from behind her, raw and urgent. Aveline froze, one hand halfway extended toward the waiting vehicle. The security guard moved swiftly, positioning himself between Aveline and the newcomer. She turned to face a man in a gray janitor's uniform, his face pale with urgency. His beard was peppered with gray, eyes wide with something that looked like fear, not fear of the security guard who now stood before him with a warning hand raised, but fear for her. "Stay back," the guard commanded. "Please," the janitor insisted, his voice dropping to a desperate plea. "The car isn't safe." Those 4 words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. The security guard's posture shifted, his attention now divided between the janitor and the car. "What are you talking about?" Aveline asked, her voice sharp with impatience and a hint of uncertainty. "Miss Langford, I'm a night shift maintenance worker here. My name's Liam Byrne." He spoke quickly, words tumbling over each other. "Psst, I overheard something I wasn't supposed to hear. About your car. About tonight." The security guard spoke into his radio, calling for backup. The replacement driver remained by the car, his expression unreadable. "Ma'am, this man is clearly disturbed," the driver called out. "We're running late." Another flash of lightning illuminated the garage, casting dramatic shadows across the concrete pillars. Thunder followed immediately, vibrating through the floor. "I'm begging you," Liam said, taking a step forward despite the guard's warning. "Take my car instead. It's nothing like yours, but it's safe, please." 2 more security guards appeared from the stairwell, moving with purpose toward the small gathering. Aveline raised a hand to stop them, studying the janitor's face. She prided herself on reading people. It was a skill that had served her well in business, and what she saw now was genuine fear, not deception. "Why should I trust you?" she asked, her voice level. "Because I have nothing to gain by lying," he answered simply, "and because I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent." For a moment that felt much longer than it was, Aveline stood motionless, calculating. The merger documents waited in her briefcase. 18 months of work, millions in potential revenue, a career-defining moment. "And yet, where is your car?" she asked finally. Relief washed over Liam's face. "Level 3, north corner. A blue Honda Civic, 10 years old. Nothing special, but it runs." Aveline turned to the security team. "Check the Mercedes thoroughly." "Ma'am, we don't have time for check it," she repeated, her tone brooking no argument. As the guards moved toward her car, Liam spoke again. "They might not find anything obvious. It could be something hard to detect." Aveline made a decision then. one based more on instinct than logic. "Show me your car, Mr. Byrne." The relief in his eyes shifted to something like disbelief, but he nodded quickly and led her toward the elevators. The security team called after them, but Aveline waved them off, instructing them to continue examining her car. Level 3 was dimly lit, populated mostly by the vehicles of night shift employees. Liam's Civic sat in a corner spot, unassuming among the other modest cars. He pulled a set of keys from his pocket and pressed the unlock button. The car's lights flashed in response. "It's clean inside," he assured her, opening the driver's door. "Just give me a second to move my daughter's backpack." As he leaned in to clear the passenger seat, Aveline took a moment to study him more carefully. His uniform was worn but well maintained. His hands were calloused, the nails short and clean. And the car itself, while obviously aging, showed signs of no visible rust, reasonably clean windows despite the rain. "You have a daughter?" she asked. He paused, glancing back at her. "Yes, ma'am, Maya. She's 8. Something in the way he said the name with both pride and a kind of protective tenderness resonated with Aveline in a way she hadn't expected. "There," he said, stepping back from the now cleared passenger seat. "It's ready." He extended the keys toward her, but Aveline shook her head. "I don't drive, Mr. Byrne. Not in the city." Understanding dawned on his face. "You want me to drive you? If you're so concerned about my safety, I assume you wouldn't object." For a moment he seemed taken aback, but then determination settled over his features. "Of course. Where are we going?" "Northcrest Pharmaceuticals, downtown office." Liam nodded and moved around to open the passenger door for her. Aveline hesitated only briefly before sliding into the seat, her designer suit looking starkly out of place against the worn fabric upholstery. As Liam took his place behind the wheel, Aveline sent a quick text to her assistant, informing him of the change in plan. Then she turned to the janitor. "Burton, you have 15 minutes to explain why I'm sitting in your Honda Civic instead of my Mercedes." Liam's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as he navigated out of the parking garage. The wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour, the rain coming down even harder than before. "I was cleaning the executive conference room on the 47th floor around 6 p.m., he began, his eyes fixed on the road. "2 men came in, didn't see me behind the credenza where I was changing a light bulb. I recognized one of them, Hargrove from Northcrest." Aveline stiffened. Victor Hargrove was the CFO of Northcrest and one of the primary negotiators in the merger. "They were talking about making sure something was taken care of before you arrived at the meeting tonight." Liam's voice grew tighter. "They mentioned your car specifically. Something about the brakes failing on the expressway overpass, making it look like an accident." The cold that settled in Aveline's chest had nothing to do with the car's struggling heater. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Burns. Sabotage. Attempted murder." "I know how it sounds," he said, turning onto the rain-slicked Main Avenue. "But I heard what I heard." "They mentioned the merger, said something about you finding discrepancies in the financial reports, about how you couldn't be allowed to back out now. Single quote." Aveline's mind raced. She had indeed found concerning patterns in Northcrest's latest quarterly reports. Numbers that didn't align with their projected growth, discrepancies that hinted at potential fraud. She'd planned to address these concerns tonight, using them as leverage to renegotiate certain terms, but she'd told no one except her personal financial advisor. "Who else have you spoken to about this?" she asked. "No one," Liam answered, navigating through the heavy traffic with surprising skill. "I tried to report it to building security, but I couldn't reach the head officer. Then I saw your car being prepared, and I just acted." Lightning illuminated his profile, the firm jaw, the worried eyes, the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't the face of someone seeking attention or trying to disrupt her evening. This was someone who had placed himself in an uncomfortable, possibly dangerous position because he believed it was right. "Why risk yourself for me?" The question came out softer than she'd intended. His answer was simple. "I have a daughter who depends on me, Ms. Langford. I know what it's like when the people who should protect you decide your life isn't worth the trouble." He paused, hands steady on the wheel as they approached a red light. "No one deserves that. Not even billionaire CEOs." There was no malice in his words, just a simple statement of principle. For the first time in a very long time, Aveline Langford found herself without an immediate response. The traffic light turned green and Liam guided the car forward through the rain-soaked intersection. Aveline checked her watch. They would arrive at Northcrest with only minutes to spare. Her phone buzzed with incoming messages, likely her assistant panicking about her unexpected change in transportation. "If what you're saying is true," she said, her voice carefully controlled, "someone at Northcrest wants me dead before I can raise concerns about their financials." "Yes, Ma'am," Liam replied, his eyes not leaving the road as lightning flashed overhead, momentarily illuminating the cityscape. "And you expect me to walk into that meeting anyway?" He glanced at her then, surprise evident in his expression. I didn't think beyond stopping you from getting in that car." Aveline allowed herself a small, sharp smile. "That's the difference between us. Mr. Byrne, I always think several steps ahead." She pulled out her phone and dialed a number from memory. After 2 rings, a gruff voice answered. "Riker Security. This is Wallace. This is Aveline Langford. I need a team at Northcrest Pharmaceuticals immediately. Discreet but present. And I need someone to meet me there, someone with digital forensics expertise. Yes, Ms. Langford. ETA 15 minutes. She ended the call and turned to find Liam watching her with newfound respect. "You believe me?" he stated, almost to himself. "I'm proceeding with caution," she corrected, though something in her tone had softened. "Tell me exactly what you heard, word for word if possible." Liam recounted the conversation in detail as they drove, the mention of brake lines, the discussion of financial discrepancies, the casual way Hargrove had laughed about ensuring she wouldn't be a problem after tonight. With each word, Aveline's expression grew colder, the calculations behind her eyes more intense. "MR," Hargrove said. "Once the brakes fail on the expressway overpass, it'll look like an unfortunate accident. Tragic, but these things happen in bad weather." Liam's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "The other man, I didn't recognize him. He asked if they'd found it yet. Mr. Hargrove said they hadn't, but that it wouldn't matter after tonight." Aveline's brow furrowed. "Found what?" "They didn't specify, but whatever it is, they seemed worried you might have it." The possibilities raced through Aveline's mind. She had been gathering information about Northcrest for months, financial reports, research data, personnel files. There were inconsistencies in all of them, but nothing concrete enough to prove wrongdoing. "Not yet. 2 more blocks," Liam said, turning onto the avenue where Northcrest headquarters loomed ahead, glass and steel facade cutting into the stormy sky like a blade. "Mr. Byrne," Aveline began, then paused, choosing her words carefully. "When we arrive, I'd prefer if you came inside with me." His eyes widened slightly. "Inside? Miss Langford, I'm a janitor. I'm wearing my work uniform. Precisely why no one will question your presence if you're pushing a maintenance cart." Understanding dawned on his face. "You want me to be your eyes and ears. I want a witness," she corrected. "Someone who heard the threat firsthand. Someone with no stake in this merger." Liam nodded slowly. "I can do that, but I need to call my neighbor who's watching Maya. Let her know I'll be late." Aveline handed him her phone. "Make it quick," as he made the brief call. Explaining to someone named Mrs. Chun that he was working late, Aveline studied his profile again. There was a steadiness to him that she found unfamiliar yet oddly reassuring. He wasn't intimidated by her or the situation, just concerned and determined. He returned her phone with a grateful nod. "Thank you." "What's her condition?" Aveline asked suddenly. Liam's expression shifted, a mixture of surprise and wariness. "Excuse me? Your daughter? She has a medical condition, doesn't she? That's why you work nights at Langford Tower. Better pay, health insurance." For a moment, the only sound was the rhythmic sweep of the wipers against the windshield. Then Liam sighed. "Spinal muscular atrophy. Type 3. It's progressive, but she can still walk. For now." His voice held no self-pity, just a matter-of-fact acknowledgement of their reality. "The treatments are expensive, but they're working." Aveline nodded, filing this information away. "My mother had she said, the admission unexpected even to herself. I was 12 when she was diagnosed." Liam glanced at her, clearly surprised by this personal revelation. "I'm sorry, it was a long time ago." She returned to business mode. "Pull into the service entrance. There's less security there." He complied, guiding the Honda around the back of the imposing building. The service area was well lit, but minimally staffed. A single security guard in a booth who barely glanced up from his phone as they approached. "Park there," Aveline instructed, pointing to a spot labeled maintenance only. As the car came to a stop, she turned to face Liam fully. "I need to be absolutely clear about something, Mr. Byrne. What we're about to do carries significant risk. If Hargrove and his associates are willing to arrange a fatal accident, they won't hesitate to eliminate other threats." "I understand," he said quietly. "Do you? You have a daughter who needs you." His jaw tightened, a flash of something fierce crossing his features. "Exactly why I'm doing this. Maya deserves a world where people can't just ... single quotes," he trailed off, struggling to find the right words. "Can't just discard lives when they become inconvenient." Aveline finished for him. Liam nodded. "Yes." Aveline held his gaze for a moment longer, then reached for her briefcase. "Wait here. I'll be back with a maintenance card and credentials for you." She stepped out into the rain, which had lessened to a steady drizzle. The security guard straightened as she approached, recognition dawning on his face. "Ms. Langford, we weren't expecting you at this entrance." She offered a practiced smile. "Change of plans, Hector. I need a maintenance cart and a temporary badge for my associate." She gestured toward the car. "Build an issue at Langford Tower. He's helping me with some sensitive equipment." Hector, clearly flattered that she remembered his name, didn't question her further. Within minutes, Liam was pushing a cart filled with cleaning supplies toward the service elevator, a visitor badge clipped to his uniform. "Follow my lead," Aveline murmured as they rode up to the executive floor. "Say nothing unless directly addressed. If anyone asks, you're checking the air filtration system in the conference room." Liam nodded, his face composed despite the tension evident in his shoulders. When the elevator doors opened, Aveline strode out with the confidence of someone who owned the building, which, after tonight, she technically would. Liam followed a respectful distance behind, pushing the cart with practiced ease. The executive suite was busy despite the late hour. Assistants hurried between offices, arms full of documents. Lawyers huddled in corners, reviewing last-minute changes. No one paid any attention to a janitor with a maintenance cart. Through the glass walls of the main conference room, Aveline could see the Northcrest board already assembled. Victor Hargrove sat at the right hand of CEO Frederick Northcrest, their heads bent close in conversation. They both looked up as she entered, their expressions carefully neutral. Aveline, Frederick greeted her, rising to his feet. We were beginning to worry. The weather, she replied smoothly, setting her briefcase on the table. I decided to take a more prudent mode of transportation. Hargrove's smile didn't reach his eyes. Wise decision. These storms can make driving treacherous. Indeed, she matched his false smile with one of her own. One can never be too careful about accidents. A flicker of something uncertainty, concern, crossed Hargrove's face before he masked it with a laugh. Absolutely. Safety first. Aveline gestured to Liam, who had positioned himself near the air vents. Don't mind the maintenance check. There have been complaints about the air quality in here, something about a foul smell. Frederick waved dismissively. Of course. Now, shall we proceed? We have all the documents prepared for your signature, actually, Aveline said, taking her seat at the table. Before we sign anything, I'd like to discuss some concerns that have come to my attention regarding the quarterly financial. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Hargrove's smile became fixed, his eyes darting briefly to Frederick. Concerns? Frederick's voice remained pleasant, but a new tension had entered his posture. What sort of concerns? Aveline opened her briefcase and removed a tablet. Discrepancies, mainly. Revenue projections that don't align with actual performance. R&D expenses that seem inflated. She swiped through several screens of data, but most concerning are the clinical trial results for NCP-247. At the mention of the drug designation, both men visibly stiffened. In the corner of her vision, Aveline saw Liam pause in his pretend inspection of the air vent. Those results are proprietary, Hargrove said, his voice tight. Yes, and they should have been disclosed during due diligence. Aveline kept her tone conversational, as if discussing nothing more significant than the weather, particularly the adverse events that were omitted from the FDA submission. Frederick's face had gone pale. I don't know what you're talking about, no? Aveline set the tablet down and folded her hands on the table. That's unfortunate, because I have copies of the original lab data, the complete data. That's impossible, Hargrove snapped, then immediately seemed to regret his outburst. Is it? Aveline raised an eyebrow. Perhaps we should discuss where I obtained this information, and why someone might be concerned enough about it to arrange a tragic accident for me on the expressway overpass. The conference room fell into a silence so absolute that the soft patter of rain against the windows sounded like artillery fire. Hargrove's face had transformed from confident arrogance to barely contained panic in the span of seconds. Frederick Northcrest's expression was more controlled, but his complexion had taken on an ashen quality. That's a very serious accusation, Aveline, Frederick finally said, his voice low and deliberate. I hope you have evidence to support such dramatic claims, evidence of tampering with my car, or evidence of falsified clinical trial data? Aveline replied smoothly. Because I have both. In the corner, Liam continued his charade of checking air vents, though his attention was entirely focused on the conversation unfolding at the table. He'd positioned himself behind Hargrove, giving him a clear view of Aveline across the table. This is absurd, Hargrove sputtered, his composure cracking. You can't possibly what, Victor? Aveline cut him off. Can't possibly have access to the original patient files. Or can't possibly know about the 3 deaths that were categorized as unrelated events despite clear causal links to NCP-247? Frederick raised a hand to silence Hargrove before he could respond. Aveline, perhaps we should discuss this privately. I don't think that would be wise, considering the evening's earlier plans. She met his gaze unflinchingly. I believe the phrase was a tragic accident in bad weather, wasn't it? From behind Hargrove, Liam saw the CFO's shoulders stiffen. The man's right hand moved almost imperceptibly toward his jacket pocket. Without thinking, Liam knocked over a bottle of cleaning solution on his cart. The sharp clatter of plastic against metal drew everyone's attention. Sorry, he mumbled, deliberately fumbling with the cart. Just cleaning up. Aveline caught his warning glance and subtly shifted her position, angling herself away from Hargrove. As I was saying, she continued, I believe full transparency is in everyone's best interest right now, especially with my security team due to arrive. She checked her watch. Any minute. The door to the conference room opened, and a tall, imposing man in a tailored suit stepped in, followed by a younger woman carrying a laptop case. Both had the unmistakable bearing of security professionals. Ms. Langford, the man acknowledged with a nod. Wallace, Riker Security. The building perimeter is secure. Thank you, Wallace. Aveline gestured to the empty seats. This is, Samira Chun, I presume? Our digital specialist? The woman nodded, already setting up her equipment. Yes, ma'am. Frederick Northcrest's face had gone from ashen to thunderous. This is a gross overreach, Aveline. You have no authority to bring armed security into my building. Oh, but I do, she countered. The preliminary merger agreement gives me inspection rights of all facilities and data. Section 12, paragraph 3. And given the circumstance with my car, I'd say security is a caution. As Wallace took up position near the door, Liam felt a measure of relief. Perhaps now Aveline was safe enough that he could step away. He had done what he needed to warn her, prevented a tragedy. Maya would be waiting, and Mrs. Chun couldn't stay all night. As he moved toward the door, Aveline caught his eye and gave a small shake of her head. The message was clear. _stay_. Hargrove had recovered some of his composure. Let's be reasonable here, he said, his voice conciliatory. If there are discrepancies in the data, I'm sure there's a logical explanation. Research protocols can be complex, and sometimes findings are subject to interpretation. Death isn't particularly subject to interpretation, Victor, Aveline replied coldly. Neither is organ failure, or the fact that your team deliberately excluded certain participants from the final analysis to skew the results. Frederick cleared his throat. These are technical matters that could result in criminal charges. Aveline finished for him. Securities fraud, FDA violations, and possibly attempted murder, though that would be harder to prove without an actual ... incident. The room fell silent again. Outside, lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the faces around the table in stark relief. In that moment, Liam saw something shift in Hargrove's expression, the panic giving way to calculation. What exactly do you want, Aveline? Frederick asked finally. She leaned forward slightly. The truth. All of it. Starting with NCP-247, but not ending there. I want to know what else you buried. And in return? Hargrove ventured. In return, I might be persuaded to structure this merger in a way that doesn't result in immediate criminal referrals. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk, but that depends entirely on what M's Chun finds in your systems tonight. Frederick and Hargrove exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Then Frederick nodded almost imperceptibly. You'll have full access, he said, though the words seemed to cause him physical pain. Victor will provide M's Chun with all necessary credentials. As Hargrove reluctantly began working with Samira Chun, Liam returned to his cleaning cart, keeping his head down but his senses alert. Something felt unresolved. Too easy. The stakes were too high for Northcrest to capitulate so quickly. His suspicions were confirmed when he noticed Frederick discreetly check his phone under the table, his expression darkening as he read a message. The CEO's eyes darted briefly to Aveline, then back to his phone. He typed a quick response before slipping the device back into his pocket. When Frederick stood, his demeanor had changed subtly. While Ms. Chun conducts her ... investigation, perhaps we should all take a short break. It's been a tense evening. I'd prefer to stay, Aveline countered. Of course, but surely your ... Maintenance person has other duties to attend to? Frederick's gaze shifted to Liam, cold and assessing. Before Aveline could respond, Liam spoke up. Actually, I need to check the filtration system in the adjacent rooms as well. Won't take long. Frederick's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he nodded. Very well. Victor, why don't you show Miss Chun to the data center? I need to step out briefly. As Frederick left the room, Liam maneuvered his cart closer to Aveline while pretending to inspect another air vent. He's planning something, he murmured, keeping his back to the glass walls where other executives might see them talking. That text message changed his approach. Aveline nodded slightly, keeping her expression neutral for anyone who might be watching. Wallace, she called to her security chief. Perhaps you should accompany Mr. Hargrove and Miss Chun, the security chief nodded, understanding the unspoken instruction to keep an eye on Hargrove. As they left, Aveline turned slightly toward Liam, their conversation hidden from view by his maintenance cart. We need to find out what was in that message, she said quietly. I might be able to follow him, Liam suggested. Maintenance workers are invisible in corporate settings. Aveline considered this. Too risky. He's already suspicious of you, she thought for a moment. But there might be another way. The glove compartment of your car, is it locked? Liam blinked, confused by the sudden change in direction. No. Why? My phone is in your car. I need you to get it. There's an app that might help us. It can access the building's security feeds. When Liam looked surprised, she added, Langford Industries built the security system for this building 3 years ago. We maintain backdoor access to all our installations. That's convenient, Liam replied, not entirely sure if he should be impressed or disturbed by this revelation. It's prudent, Aveline corrected. The key card on my cart will get you back in through the servants. Liam hesitated. What about you? If Frederick is planning something, Wallace left 2 men in the lobby. I'll call one up if Frederick returns. She met his gaze directly. I'll be fine for 5 minutes. Reluctantly, Liam nodded and began pushing his cart toward the door. As he left, Aveline turned to her briefcase, removing a small recorder. She placed it discreetly on the underside of the conference table, then sat back, expression composed as she waited. Outside, the rain had intensified again, driven sideways by gusting winds. Liam jogged toward his Honda, phone already in hand, to check on Maya. The service entrance was dimly lit, the security booth now empty. Something about that detail nagged at him, but his focus was split between getting to his car and making sure his daughter was okay. Mrs. Chun answered. On the third ring, her voice barely audible over what sounded like cartoons playing in the background. Everything's fine, Mr. Burns, she assured him when he apologized for the delay. Maya's already asleep on the couch. Take your time. Relief flooded through him. Thank you. I shouldn't be much longer, as he ended the call. Liam reached his car and unlocked it quickly, sliding into the driver's seat to escape the rain. Water dripped from his hair onto the worn upholstery as he leaned across to open the glove compartment. The interior light illuminated the contents. Vehicle registration, insurance papers, a small first aid kit, and a folded piece of paper he didn't recognize. Frowning, he pulled it out and unfolded it. It was a laboratory report on Northcrest Pharmaceuticals' letterhead. For a moment, Liam stared at it in confusion. Then understanding dawned with cold clarity. This wasn't his paper. Someone had placed it in his glove compartment recently. His hands trembling slightly, he scanned the document. It detailed adverse reactions to something called NCP-247 in pediatric patients with neuromuscular disorders. At the bottom was a handwritten note. Victor, bury this with the others. Trial proceeds as planned. Frederick Northcrest. Liam's blood ran cold as he read the list of conditions being treated in the trial. Third on the list, spinal muscular atrophy, the same condition as Maya's. His phone suddenly vibrated with a text message from an unknown number. Get back inside now. Frederick returned with security. Aveline. She'd somehow managed to get his number. Heart racing, Liam grabbed the lab report and Aveline's phone from the glove compartment and burst from the car into the rain. As he sprinted back toward the service entrance, the pieces began falling into place. This wasn't just about financial fraud or a merger gone wrong. Northcrest was knowingly testing a dangerous drug on children's children like Maya and hiding the results. The service entrance was no longer unattended. Two men in dark suits, not the standard Northcrest security uniforms, now stood guard, their postures tense and alert. Liam slowed his approach, clutching the damning laboratory report in his rain-soaked hand. These weren't regular security personnel. They had the unmistakable look of private contractors, the kind hired for jobs that required deniability. Liam ducked behind a delivery truck, his mind racing. Getting back into the building through the main entrance would be impossible, but Aveline needed the evidence he'd found. The text message from her had been urgent. Frederick was back, and he hadn't returned alone. He scanned the building's exterior, his years of maintenance work giving him an advantage. Every building had its weaknesses, its overlooked access points. His gaze settled on a narrow utility entrance halfway down the eastern wall, typically used for electrical contractors and HVAC maintenance. If the building's layout was standard, it would connect to the main service corridors. Clutching Aveline's phone and the lab report tightly, Liam made his way through the driving rain, keeping close to the building's shadow. The utility door was secured with an electronic keypad, but the keycard Aveline had given him might work. He swiped it, holding his breath. The light blinked red. Frustrated, Liam examined the card more closely in the dim light. It was a Langford Industries master key, not a Northcrest card. Then he remembered something Aveline had said. Langford Industries built the security system for this building 3 years ago. On a hunch, he flipped the card over and noticed a small sequence of numbers printed on the back. 5839. He punched the code into the keypad. The light turned green. The door unlocked with a soft click. Liam slipped inside, finding himself in a narrow service corridor illuminated by flickering fluorescent lights. The corridor was deserted, the distant hum of the building's central systems the only sound. He oriented himself quickly. The executive floor would be 12 floors up. He found a service elevator at the end of the hall and used the keycard again. As the elevator ascended, Liam carefully folded the lab report and tucked it into his inner pocket, then checked Aveline's phone. The screen was locked, but a notification was visible. Security alert. Executive floor. The elevator doors opened onto the 12th floor service corridor, and Liam immediately heard raised voices coming from the direction of the executive suite. Moving cautiously, he navigated the back hallways, using his knowledge of building layouts to approach the conference room from the rear entrance, one typically used by catering staff. Through the small window in the service door, he could see into the conference room. The scene inside made his blood run cold. Aveline stood at one end of the table, her posture rigid, surrounded by 3 men in suits, Frederick's private security. Wallace, her security chief, was nowhere to be seen. Neither was Samira Chun. Victor Hargrove sat at the table, a smug expression on his face, while Frederick paced the room, his earlier composure completely abandoned. Completely unacceptable, Frederick was saying, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Breaking into our secure systems, making wild accusations. We both know they're not wild, Aveline replied, her voice steady despite her precarious position. NCP-247 is killing patients, Frederick, children, and you're covering it up to protect your stock price. Hargrove slammed his hand on the table. You have no proof. Nothing but speculation and corporate espionage. The backup server in Singapore has everything, Aveline countered. Every death, every adverse event, every email where you discussed how to hide them. It's all being downloaded as we speak. Liam saw Frederick freeze, his face paling. You're bluffing, am I? Aveline's composure was remarkable. Samira Chun isn't just downloading your data. She's comparing it to the original dataset we've had for months, the one your whistleblower sent us before they disappeared. Liam realized with sudden clarity that Aveline had been investigating Northcrest long before tonight, that perhaps she'd engineered the merger specifically to gain access to their systems. The confrontation in the conference room wasn't spontaneous. It was the culmination of months of work, but her plan hadn't accounted for Frederick's private security force, or for Wallace and Chun being separated from her. She was cornered and vulnerable, playing a dangerous game of bluff. Search her, Frederick commanded abruptly. Find her phone. Whatever remote access she has, shut it down. One of the security men stepped forward, reaching for Aveline's briefcase. She stepped back, but there was nowhere to go. Liam had seconds to make a decision. He couldn't burst in. he'd be overwhelmed immediately, but he had Eveline's phone in his pocket. The phone, she claimed, could access the building's security systems. With trembling fingers, he tried the most obvious passcode, 5839, the same as the keycard. The phone unlocked. On the home screen, an app labeled Sentinel was already running. Liam tapped it, revealing a schematic of the Northcrest building with various systems highlighted: power, HVAC, security, fire suppression. His eyes locked on the fire alarm icon. Inside the conference room, the security man was now rifling through Eveline's briefcase while Frederick watched impatiently. "You won't find it there," Eveline said coolly. "The remote access is already established. The data is already being uploaded to the cloud." Frederick's face contorted with fury. "You think this ends with you walking away? Do you have any idea what's at stake?" "I know exactly what's at stake," Eveline replied. "Billions in market valuation versus the lives of children who trusted you to help them." "It doesn't seem like a difficult choice to me." "It's not that simple," Hargrove interjected. "The overall benefits of the drug outweigh the isolated adverse events. A few unfortunate outcomes don't negate the potential to help thousands." "A few unfortunate outcomes?" Eveline's voice hardened. "Is that what you call dead children, Victor?" Liam's finger hovered over the fire alarm icon. One tap would trigger the system throughout the building, forcing an evacuation, but it would also alert the authorities, bringing unwanted attention before they had secured the evidence. Then he noticed another option: sector isolation. The app allowed targeted activation of emergency systems by floor or section. He quickly selected the executive floor and then environmental controls. A menu appeared with options for temperature, lighting, and sprinklers. Liam hesitated only briefly before selecting sprinkler test, executive conference room. Inside, Frederick was advancing on Eveline, his patience clearly exhausted. "This ends now. You'll sign the merger documents as agreed, with no further mention of these baseless accusations." Or the ceiling sprinklers activated with a mechanical groan, instantly drenching everyone in the room. Alarms blared as water cascaded down, soaking documents and creating instant chaos. In the confusion, Liam slipped through the service door, staying low and moving quickly along the wall toward Eveline. "Fire system malfunction," one of the security men shouted over the alarm. Frederick was shouting something at Hargrove, gesturing frantically at the soaked merger documents on the table. The security team's attention momentarily diverted, Liam reached Eveline's side, pressing her phone into her hand. "Follow me," he murmured, guiding her toward the service door. "I found something in the car." Recognition flickered in her eyes as she realized who he was. Without hesitation, she followed him through the service door and into the back corridor, leaving Frederick and his team cursing in the daily. "Wallace?" she asked as they moved swiftly down the hallway. "No sign of him or Chun," Liam replied. "We need to find them." They reached a junction in the service corridor. Eveline checked her now-returned phone, pulling up the building's security feed. "Data center is 3 floors down," she said, studying the schematic. "But the elevators will be locked down because of the fire alarm." "Service stairs," Liam suggested, pointing to a nondescript door at the end of the hall. "They'll bypass the main security checkpoints." As they pushed through the door into the stairwell, Eveline finally asked, "What did you find in the car?" Liam pulled the folded lab report from his pocket and handed it to her. Even in the dim light of the stairwell, he could see her expression change as she scanned the document. "This was in your glove compartment?" she asked, her voice tight. "Yes, someone planted it there while we were inside." Liam hesitated, then added, "My daughter has SMA. It's on the list of conditions they're testing NCP-247 for." Eveline looked up sharply. "Is she in the trial?" "No. We've been on a waiting list for months." The realization of how close Maya had come to being one of those unfortunate outcomes sent a chill through him that had nothing to do with his soaked clothing. "This is exactly what we needed," Eveline said, carefully folding the report and securing it inside her jacket. Frederick's handwriting on a document explicitly instructing the burial of adverse event data. "It's the smoking gun." A door slammed somewhere above them, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. Frederick's security team had figured out which way they'd gone. "We need to move," Liam urged. "Now." They descended rapidly, Eveline keeping pace despite her formal attire and heels. 2 floors down, Liam stopped suddenly, holding up a hand for silence. Voices echoed from below, more security personnel ascending to cut them off. "We're trapped in the stairwell." "This way," Liam whispered urgently, pulling Eveline toward a nondescript door on the landing. Unlike the fire doors leading to each floor, this one was unmarked, a maintenance access point to the building's central utility shaft. The door was locked, but Eveline already had her keycard ready. The light flashed green, and they slipped through just as the sound of footsteps grew louder from both directions. They found themselves on a narrow metal catwalk suspended in a vertical concrete shaft that ran the height of the building. The space hummed with the sound of electrical conduits and water pipes. Dim emergency lighting cast long shadows across the industrial infrastructure. "Maintenance access," Liam explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "Every high-rise has them. Invisible highways for people like me. Single quotes." Eveline glanced down at the dizzying drop below them, then back at Liam with newfound appreciation. "Where does it lead?" "Everywhere." He pointed to a ladder attached to the wall. "Down 3 levels, there's an access point near the data center. We can get to your people from there." They began their descent, the metal rungs slick under their hands. The events of the evening had transformed them both, the CEO and the janitor now allies in a desperate mission, their usual worlds colliding in ways neither could have imagined hours earlier. As they reached the 9th floor access point, Aveline paused. They'll be watching the main entrance to the data center. We need a distraction. Liam thought for a moment. The environmental controls for that floor should be accessible from here. He studied the various pipes and junction boxes around them, then pointed to a gray metal panel. There, using a small multi-tool from his pocket, Liam pried open the panel to reveal a complex array of switches and circuit breakers. Years of maintenance work had taught him to read these systems like a second language. If I disable the cooling system for the server room, their emergency protocols will kick in, he explained. It should draw their attention away from the main entrance. Aveline nodded. Do it. Liam carefully disconnected 2 critical relays. Almost immediately, a distant alarm began to sound, a different tone from the fire alarm, more urgent and insistent. Server temperature warning, Aveline murmured. Their IT team will be scrambling. They exited through the 9th floor access door into another service corridor, this one busier with staff responding to the various alarms. In the confusion, Liam and Aveline blended in, moving purposefully toward the data center. Through a set of glass doors, they could see the data center's antechamber. 2 of Frederick's security personnel stood outside the main server room, looking increasingly agitated as red warning lights flashed on the environmental control panels. But there was no sign of Wallace or Chun. Where are they? Liam whispered. Aveline's eyes narrowed as she studied the scene. The secure server room is behind that second set of doors. They must be in there. Single quotes. She checked her phone. The temperature alarm won't distract them for long. We need another way in. Single quotes. Liam scanned their surrounding, his gaze settling on a maintenance cart similar to the one he'd been using upstairs. An idea formed. Wait here, he told Aveline, slipping away before she could object. Approaching the cart, Liam nodded casually to the frantic IT staff rushing past. No one questioned his presence, the invisibility of service workers once again proving advantageous. He quickly gathered several items from the cart, including a clipboard, a work order form, and a small toolkit. Returning to Aveline, he handed her the clipboard. Follow my lead. Act like you own the place. A hint of amusement flickered across her face. That won't be difficult. Single quotes. Together, they walked directly toward the data center entrance, Liam pushing the borrowed cart, Aveline striding confidently beside him with the clipboard. The security personnel straightened as they approached. This area is restricted, one of them said, hand moving subtly toward his weapon. Aveline fixed him with a cold stare. I'm aware. I'm also aware that your server room is about to suffer catastrophic overheating because someone disconnected the auxiliary system. She thrust the clipboard toward him. Environmental systems override, authorized by Frederick Northcrest himself. Now step aside before you lose millions in hardware. The security men exchanged uncertain glances. The alarms were growing more insistent, and the fear of being responsible for server damage clearly outweighed their suspicion. We need to check with Northcrest, the taller one insisted. By all means, Aveline replied smoothly. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to hear how you delayed emergency maintenance while the core temperature continues to rise. The system will auto-shut down in approximately 3 minutes. The guard's resolve wavered. Fine, but be quick. They stepped aside, allowing Liam and Aveline to pass through the first set of doors. The antechamber was empty except for monitoring equipment and the second security door leading to the main server room. That won't work twice, Liam murmured, eyeing the secure door. It doesn't have to. Aveline moved to a wall-mounted emergency panel and broke the glass with her elbow. Inside was a manual override lever for the data center doors designed to allow evacuation during fire emergency. The moment she pulled it, all electronic doors in the data center unlocked simultaneously. Alarms blared even louder as they pushed through into the main server room. Inside, they found Wallace and 2 Riker security personnel holding Samira Chun protectively behind them, facing off against 3 of Frederick's men. All parties had weapons drawn in a tense standoff among the humming server racks. Ms. Langford, Wallace acknowledged without taking his eyes off the opposition. Glad you could join us. Status? Aveline asked crisply. Ms. Chun has secured approximately 60% of the target data. These gentlemen interrupted before we could complete the download. One of Frederick's men, clearly the leader, kept his weapon trained on Wallace. This is corporate espionage, Langford. You're finished. I think not, Aveline replied, stepping forward with a confidence that made Leah marvel. She held up the lab report he'd found. This document, written in Frederick's own hand, proves criminal negligence and fraud. Children died because of NCP-247, and Northcrest deliberately covered it up. The security leader's expression didn't change. Hand over all copies of the data and we can discuss terms. There are no terms to discuss, Aveline countered. The data is already uploading to secure servers outside your reach. In approximately 30 seconds, the evidence will be backed up in 5 different countries. She's bluffing, one of the other men said. Samira Chun spoke up from behind Wallace. The upload is at 92%. Singapore server mirror established. Tokyo backup initiating. The security leader's jaw tightened. This isn't over, Langford. You have no idea what you're interfering with. NCP-247 is bigger than Northcrest. There are government contracts, military applications. Military applications? Aveline repeated, her voice sharp with disbelief. For a drug being tested on children with neuromuscular disorders? Liam felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. The implications were staggering. The pediatric trials were just one application, the man continued, clearly trying to buy time. The neural regeneration properties have significant tactical value. Do you think the Pentagon will thank you for exposing this? I think they'll be very interested to learn that Northcrest has been using children as unwitting test subjects for a military bioweapon, Aveline replied coldly. A tense silence fell over the room, broken only by the persistent alarms and the soft beep of Chun's equipment as the upload completed. Done, Chun announced. All data secured and distributed. The security leader's expression hardened. You've made a grave mistake. He began to back toward the door, his men following his lead. This won't end here. Actually, it will, came a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see two men in dark suits holding badges. FBI, the taller one announced. Everyone put your weapons down. Slowly. For a moment, no one moved. Then Wallace carefully lowered his gun, signaling his team to do the same. Frederick's security team hesitated longer, but eventually complied. Ms. Langford, the FBI agent continued, we received your data upload approximately 7 minutes ago. Preliminary analysis confirms your allegations. We have agents taking MR Northcrest and MR Hargrove into custody as we speak. Liam looked at Aveline in stunned disbelief. You contacted the FBI? When? A small, satisfied smile played at the corner of her mouth. When I first found the discrepancies 3 months ago, I needed concrete evidence before they could act. She nodded toward the lab report in her hand. This was the final piece. As the FBI agents began securing the room and taking statements, Aveline turned to Liam. You should call your daughter again. Make sure she's safe. You think they would target her? The possibility sent a wave of terror through him. I don't know, Aveline admitted. But if Northcrest knew about your connection to me, and they knew your daughter has SMA ... single quotes, she didn't need to finish the thought. Liam was already dialing Mrs. Chun's number, his hands shaking. No answer. He tried again, panic rising in his throat. Still nothing. Something's wrong, he said, his voice hollow. She always answers. Aveline immediately turned to Wallace. We need a team at this address now. She took Liam's phone and read the location to her security chief. Wallace nodded grimly. On it. Liam felt the floor tilting beneath him, his worst fears crystallizing into a nightmare reality. If anything happened to Maya because of his actions tonight, we'll take my car, Aveline said firmly, gripping his arm. It's faster. Your car was sabotaged, Liam reminded her, his thoughts scattered. Not the one in the executive garage, she replied. My backup vehicle. She turned to the FBI agents. We have reason to believe a child may be in danger, potentially targeted as retaliation. We need to move now, the lead agent nodded. We'll send units to the address as well. Go. As they rushed from the data center, Liam's mind was consumed by a single thought. Maya, his sweet, brave daughter who'd already endured so much, who trusted him to keep her safe. The executive garage was 3 levels below the Northcrest lobby, accessible only by private elevator. As they descended, Liam repeatedly tried Mrs. Chun's number, each unanswered ring increasing his dread. She always answers, he repeated, his voice hollow. Always. Aveline maintained a composed exterior, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed her concern. Wallace's team is 8 minutes out. The FBI will be there in 12. The elevator doors opened to reveal a pristine garage housing only a handful of luxury vehicles. Aveline moved purposefully toward a sleek black Audi R8, its polished surface reflecting the overhead lights like obsidian glass. This is your backup car? Liam asked, momentarily distracted from his worry. One of them. She pressed her thumb to a small scanner on the door handle. The car unlocked with a soft click. Get in. Inside, the vehicle smelled of new leather and subtle, expensive perfume. Aveline started the engine, which purred to life with restrained power. Under different circumstances, Liam might have been intimidated by such opulence, but now his only thought was reaching Maya. They accelerated up the exit ramp and emerged into the rain-soaked night, the storm having intensified during their time inside. Lightning slashed across the sky as Aveline navigated through downtown traffic with unexpected skill. Where did you learn to drive like that? Liam asked, bracing himself as she executed a perfect drift around a corner. My father insisted all his children know how to handle performance vehicles, she replied, eyes fixed on the road. He called it practical education. Something in her tone hinted at a complexity Liam couldn't begin to unravel. Instead, he focused on the GPS, which showed they were still 15 minutes from his apartment in the Eastern District. Tell me about Maya, Aveline said suddenly. The request caught Liam off guard, but he understood the intent to keep him from spiraling into panic. She's smart, too smart sometimes. A fleeting smile crossed his face. Loves space, dinosaurs, any kind of science. Always asking questions I can't answer. She wants to be a researcher someday. Find cures for diseases like hers. Aveline navigated around a stalled delivery truck, the Audi's tires hissing on the wet asphalt. How long has she had SMO? Diagnosed at 3. The tremors started first, then the fatigue. She's 8 now. Liam stared out at the rain-blurred cityscape. The treatments help, but they're just managing symptoms, not curing anything. That's why the Northcrest trial seemed like ... a miracle, Aveline finished for him. Yeah, the word hung between them, heavy with implications. I was on a waiting list to get her evaluated for inclusion. If what they're really doing is what you said, we'll get her real help. Aveline cut in, her voice firm. Legitimate research, ethical trials. Langford Industries has a medical division that she stopped mid-sentence. Her attention suddenly fixed on the rear view. Liam turned to look and spotted a dark SUV following uncomfortably close, its high beams flooding their car with harsh light. "We've got company," Aveline said, her voice dropping to a controlled calm that Liam found more unsettling than panic would have been. The SUV accelerated, pulling alongside them through rain-streaked windows. Liam caught a glimpse of the driver, one of Frederick's security personnel from the data center. "Hold on," Aveline warned, just before slamming on the brakes. The Audi skidded, then gripped the wet road as the SUV shot past them. Unable to react in time, Aveline immediately executed a hard turn down a narrow side street, the powerful car responding to her commands with precision. "Call Wallace," she instructed, eyes never leaving the road. Speaker mode. Liam fumbled with her phone, finding Wallace's contact and activating the call. It connected after one ring. "Miss Langford," Wallace's voice filled the car. "We're being pursued. Black SUV, likely Northcrest security. We're heading east on Riverside Drive." "Understood. Our team is already at the apartment." No sign of forced entry, but no response from inside either. Liam's heart lurched. "Maya? Mrs. Chun?" Unknown at this time. "We're proceeding with caution." The SUV had reappeared in their rearview mirror, joined now by a second identical vehicle. "Wallace, we need an escort," Aveline said calmly. "And alert the FBI about our tale." "Already done. Local PD has units converging on your location." 8 at 3 minutes. Aveline made another sharp turn, the Audi's tires sending up sheets of water as they hydroplaned momentarily before regaining traction. "We won't last 3 minutes. They're trying to force us off the road." As if confirming her assessment, one of the SUVs accelerated, pulling alongside and swerving toward them. Aveline anticipated the move, dropping back just enough for the vehicle to miss them. "These aren't security guards anymore," she said grimly. "This is something else, Dot." Single quotes. Liam clutched the door handle, his knuckles white. "What do you mean? Corporate security doesn't run offensive driving maneuvers. These are professional assets." The implication hung in the air between them. Whatever Northcrest was hiding, it went far beyond pharmaceutical fraud. The military connection Hargrove's man had mentioned suddenly seemed much more substantial. The second SUV had maneuvered to their other side, attempting to box them in. Aveline's expression hardened as she assessed their dwindling option. "When I say now, open the glove compartment and press the red button inside," she instructed. Liam blinked in confusion but nodded. Aveline accelerated suddenly, pulling slightly ahead of both SUVs. Then, with a swift movement that defied the laws of physics, she executed a perfectly controlled spin, the Audi rotating 180 degrees so they were now facing their pursuers head-on. "Now," she shouted. Liam lunged for the glove compartment, finding a small red button recessed into its back wall. He pressed it without hesitation. Instantly, blinding white light erupted from concealed emitters in the Audi's headlights in guerrilla military-grade high-intensity strobe that turned night into disorienting day. The SUVs swerved wildly, their drivers temporarily blinded. Aveline had already completed her maneuver, sending the Audi shooting past the disoriented vehicles in the opposite direction. "What the hell was that?" Liam gasped. "Tactical countermeasure." She checked the rearview mirror, confirming the SUVs were no longer in pursuit. "One of my brother's innovations. He designed security systems." In the distance, police sirens wailed, growing closer. Aveline's phone buzzed with an incoming call from Wallace. "Go ahead," she answered. "We're in the apartment," Wallace reported. "It's empty." No signs of struggle, but the back door was unlocked. The blood drained from Liam's face. "Maya," he whispered. "Anything else?" Aveline pressed. "Yes, there's a note on the refrigerator. It says, 'Maya with Dr. Patel for emergency appointment. Called you but no answer. Left message. Mrs. Chun.'" Liam frowned. "Dr. Patel? That's not Maya's doctor. Is there a phone number? An address?" "City Medical Center, Pediatric Wing," Wallace read. "There's a time note at 8:30 p.m. Liam checked his phone. "I have no missed calls from Mrs. Chun, and no voicemail." Aveline's eyes narrowed. "It's a setup. Wallace, get your team to City Medical immediately. We're heading there now." She ended the call and executed another precise turn, heading toward the medical district. "Why would they take Maya to a hospital?" Liam asked, fear clawing at his throat. "Control of the environment," Aveline replied grimly. "Medical facilities have restricted access. Security protocols. It's the perfect place to isolate a target." "Target," Liam repeated numbly. "My daughter is a target now." Aveline's expression softened fractionally. "I'm sorry, Liam, but we're going to get her back. I promise you that." The rain had lessened slightly, though lightning continued to illuminate the sky in brilliant, jagged bursts. As they approached the medical district, Aveline slowed the Audi, taking a more cautious approach. "City Medical Center has underground parking," she said, "but that's too obvious. We'll go in through the emergency room entrance instead." Liam nodded absently, his thoughts consumed by worst-case scenarios. If Northcrest was willing to tamper with his car and send armed pursuers after them, What might they do to Maya? Aveline seemed to read his thoughts. They won't hurt her, Liam. She's valuable to them as leverage, yes, but also as a potential trial subject. They'll want to keep her safe. Safe for what? He demanded. You saw that report. Children died from NCP-247, which is why they're desperate enough to do this, Aveline replied. They've invested billions in that drug. If the military applications are real, the stakes are even higher. They need viable test subjects with specific neurological conditions, and Maya fits the profile. The Audi pulled into the emergency room roundabout of City Medical Center, a massive complex of glass and steel that dominated the eastern skyline. Unlike the corporate sleekness of Northcrest's headquarters, the hospital exuded a utilitarian efficiency, its curved facade designed to accommodate a constant flow of ambulances and patients. As they stepped out of the car, a fresh wave of rain washed over them. Liam paused, staring up at the imposing building where his daughter might be held. If anything happens to her, he began. It won't. Aveline cut him off, her voice leaving no room for doubt. We're gonna find her, and then we're gonna make Northcrest pay for every second of fear they've caused you both. Liam looked at the woman beside him, this CEO who hours earlier had been a distant figure of wealth and power, someone whose world couldn't have been further from his own. Now they stood as equals in a fight that transcended corporate hierarchies and social divides. Why are you doing this? He asked quietly. You could have walked away once you had the evidence, called the FBI and let them handle it. Why risk yourself for us? Lightning flashed, illuminating Aveline's face as she turned to him. In that brief, stark moment, Liam saw something in her eyes he hadn't expected, a fierceness that went beyond professional duty or moral obligation. Because 18 years ago I was Maya, she said simply, and no one came for me. Before Liam could ask what she meant, Aveline was already moving toward the emergency entrance, her stride purposeful. He hurried after her, questions burning in his mind but pushed aside by the more urgent need to find Maya. The emergency department was controlled. Chaos medical personnel moving with practiced efficiency among patients in various states of distress. At the main desk, Aveline transformed before Liam's eyes. Gone was the hard-edged CEO who had faced down corporate conspirators. In her place stood a woman radiating concerned authority. My niece was brought in about an hour ago, she told the triage nurse, her voice trembling just enough to convey genuine worry. Maya Byrne, 8 years old. Her babysitter called and said there was some kind of emergency appointment with a doctor. Patel? The nurse checked her computer. I don't see a Maya Byrne registered in our system. Please check again, Aveline insisted. She has spinal muscular atrophy. It would have been noted in her file. The nurse's brow furrowed as she scrolled through her records. No pediatric admissions matching that description. We don't have a Dr. Patel on staff in pediatrics either. Liam felt a chill that had nothing to do with his rain-soaked clothes. If Maya wasn't registered at City Medical, where was she? Aveline seemed to anticipate his panic. She must be in another wing, she said smoothly. Could you check the specialty clinics? Perhaps neurology. As the nurse made the call, Aveline's phone vibrated with a text from Wallace. Sweep of hospital complete. No sign of target. Standing by at north entrance. Liam read the message over her shoulder, his heart sinking. They're not here, he whispered. I'm sorry, the nurse said, returning to them. There's no record of a Maya Byrne anywhere in our system tonight. Aveline thanked her, then guided Liam toward a quieter corner of the waiting area. They've moved her, she said in a low voice, or they never brought her here at all. Then where? Liam fought to keep his voice steady. Where would they take her? Think, Liam. You overheard Hargrove and Northcrest talking. Was there any mention of a facility? A lab? Anywhere they might conduct clinical work outside official channels? Liam closed his eyes, forcing himself to revisit the fragments of conversation he'd overheard in the conference room. Most of it had been about the merger, about silencing Aveline, but there had been something else. ... Hargrove mentioned a place called Blackwater, he said suddenly. He said the special cases were being moved there after the merger was finalized. Recognition flashed in Aveline's eyes. Blackwater Research Facility. It's a Northcrest subsidiary. Officially a veterinary research lab. It's about 30 minutes outside the city. How do you know about it? Because I've been investigating Northcrest for 9 months, she admitted. Blackwater was on my list of suspicious properties, but I couldn't get anyone inside. They have military-grade security. Her phone rang Wallace again. She answered immediately, putting him on speaker. Ms. Langford, we've got a location on the Chun woman. Traffic cameras picked her up getting into a van with medical insignia about 40 minutes ago. She appeared to be under duress. The child? Liam asked, leaning toward the phone. There was a small figure with her, partially obscured. We believe it was your daughter, sir. The van headed west on the interstate toward Blackwater, Aveline. Wallace, I need a full tactical team at these coordinates. She rattled off a string of numbers. And alert our FBI contacts. Tell them we have a probable child abduction connected to the Northcrest case. Already done, ma'am. Our team is en route. ETA 20 minutes. FBI says they're dispatching, but jurisdiction complications may delay them. Unacceptable, Aveline snapped. Tell Director Halle I'm calling in the Montgomery favor. He'll understand. Yes, ma'am. As she ended the call, Liam stared at her with newfound astonishment. You have the FBI director on speed dial? Not exactly. But I have information he needs, and he knows it. She was already moving toward the exit. We need to get to Blackwater now. Back in the Audi, racing through the rain-slicked streets, Liam finally asked the question that had been burning in his mind since her revelation outside the hospital. What did you mean before? About being Maya 18 years ago? Aveline's hands tightened on the steering wheel. For a long moment, he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she spoke, her voice so quiet he had to strain to hear it over the engine's purr. I was 12 when my mother died from complications of multiple sclerosis. Within a month, my father had enrolled me and my brother in a special research program for children with genetic predispositions to neurological disorders. She navigated onto the interstate, accelerating smoothly into the sparse late-night traffic. We didn't understand what was happening at first. The doctors were kind, the facility comfortable. They told us we were helping find a cure that might have saved our mother. A muscle worked in her jaw, the only visible sign of emotion on her otherwise composed face. 6 months in, the other children started getting sick, violent headaches, seizures. 3 died in 1 week. They said it was an unfortunate reaction to the treatment. My brother developed symptoms too milder but frightening. I was the only one who showed no adverse effects. What was the treatment? Liam asked softly. An experimental compound called XR27, the precursor to what would eventually become NCP-247. The revelation hit Liam like a physical blow. Northcrest was testing on children 18 years ago, not Northcrest. Chimera Pharmaceuticals, the company my father sold us to. Her voice turned bitter. They paid him $8 million for exclusive access to his genetically valuable children. My God, Liam whispered. How did you get out? I didn't, not at first. I endured 3 years of tests, injections, spinal taps, watched other children disappear, replaced by new ones whose parents had made similar bargains. She took a hard turn onto a rural highway, the Audi's headlights cutting through the darkness. Then one night I stole a keycard from a lab tech who'd fallen asleep, got myself and my brother out through a service tunnel. We lived on the streets for weeks before a social worker found us. What happened to Chimera? To your father? Chimera rebranded after a corporate restructuring. They became Northcrest Pharmaceuticals. Her smile was cold and sharp. As for my father, he had a tragic accident 2 years after we escaped. His brake lines failed on a mountain road in Switzerland. The implication hung in the air between them. Liam didn't press further. When I turned 18, I inherited his controlling interest in Langford Industries. She continued. By 25, I had enough power and resources to begin dismantling the network that had facilitated those experiments. Northcrest is the last piece of the puzzle, the final remnant of Chimera. Liam understood now this wasn't just a business merger gone wrong. It was the culmination of a vendetta 18 years in the making. That's why you believed me in the garage, he said, realization dawning. You recognized the pattern. The moment you mentioned the car wasn't safe, I knew. She slowed slightly as they approached a turnoff marked by a nondescript sign. Blackwater Agricultural Research. Restricted access. Instead of taking the main entrance, Aveline continued past, eventually turning onto a narrow maintenance road that circled behind the facility. Wallace's team will create a diversion at the main gate, she explained, killing the headlights as they approached a secluded area of the perimeter fence. We'll enter through the drainage culvert on the east side. You've planned this, Liam observed. For years, she admitted, but I never had enough evidence to move against them legally. Now, thanks to you, I do. She parked the Audi in a grove of trees, concealing it from casual observation. As they exited the vehicle, Liam noticed she had retrieved something from under her seat. Small black case which she quickly tucked inside her jacket. The rain had stopped, but the night air was heavy with moisture, the ground soft and muddy beneath their feet. In the distance, the Blackwater facility rose like a fortress, a cluster of low, windowless buildings surrounded by high fences topped with razor wire. Floodlights illuminated the perimeter, casting harsh white light across the surrounding fields. There, Aveline whispered, pointing to a dark gap in the fence line, partially obscured by overgrown vegetation. The drainage system was retrofitted when they expanded the facility 5 years ago. The blueprints showed a vulnerability they never addressed as they approached the fence. A sudden commotion erupted at the main gate, flashing lights, shouting voices. Wallace's team creating their diversion. Now Aveline urged, leading Liam toward the culvert entrance. The concrete pipe was wider than Liam had expected, its interior damp but passable. They moved in a crouched position, guided by the dim light of Aveline's phone. This leads directly to the lower level of the main laboratory building, she explained quietly. If they're keeping Maya anywhere, it would be in the clinical. How do you know so much about this place? Liam asked, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. I make it my business to know my enemies, she replied simply, especially when they don't know they're my enemy. They continued in silence for several minutes before reaching a metal grate blocking their path. Beyond it, Liam could make out the dim outlines of a utility room. Aveline produced a small tool from her pocket and made quick work of the rusted fastening. The grate came loose with a low groan of protest, and they carefully maneuvered it aside. The utility room beyond the grate was dimly lit by emergency lights, casting long shadows across abandoned maintenance equipment. Aveline moved with surprising stealth, her expensive shoes discarded in favor of bare feet to minimize noise. Liam followed, his years of moving quietly through occupied buildings serving him well now. The clinical wing should be 2 levels up, Aveline whispered, consulting a schematic on her phone. There's a service elevator at the end of this corridor. The facility was eerily quiet, too quiet for an active research center, even at this late hour. As they approached the service elevator, they heard voices and froze, pressing themselves into a shadowed alcove. Two technicians in lab coats walked past, their conversation drifting to Liam and Aveline's hiding place. Complete evacuation by morning. Doctor, Mercer said, we're transferring everything to the offshore site. What about the new subject, the one they brought in tonight? Special transport. Hargrove's orders. They're prepping her now. Liam's heart lurched. They were talking about Maya. Which lab? The first technician asked. C7, the isolation suite. As their footsteps faded, Liam moved to follow them, but Aveline caught his arm. Wait, she cautioned. We need to be strategic. C7 will be heavily guarded if they're planning a special transport. They're prepping her. Liam hissed, the words like acid in his mouth. We don't have time to be strategic. 5 more minutes of planning could be the difference between getting Maya out safely or getting caught ourselves, Aveline reasoned. Trust me, Liam, please. The desperation in his eyes matched her own quiet intensity. Finally, he nodded. Aveline consulted her schematic again. C7 is a controlled environment chamber, usually used for infectious disease protocols. It has its own ventilation, power, and security systems, separate from the main facility. How do we get in? We don't. Not directly. She pointed to an adjacent section on the schematic, but the observation room connected to it should be accessible through this maintenance pass. They bypassed the elevator, opting instead for an emergency stairwell. Each step upward increased Liam's anxiety, his mind conjuring horrific images of what might be happening to Maya. The only comfort, cold as it was that Northcrest clearly valued her as a test subject. They wouldn't risk harming her. Not yet. The second floor was more active, forcing them to move with extreme caution. Twice they had to retreat into supply closets to avoid security patrols. The facility was clearly in the process of evacuation. Staff hurriedly packing equipment, data drives being wiped, documents shredded. They're destroying evidence, Aveline murmured as they watched a technician feeding stacks of papers into an industrial shredder. The FPI raid at Northcrest must have triggered their contingency protocols. They finally reached the narrow maintenance passage that, according to Aveline's schematic, should lead to the C7 observation. The passage was tight, barely wide enough for them to move single file, filled with bundled cables and ventilation duct. This was designed for equipment access, not people, Aveline explained as they squeezed through, but it bypasses the main security checkpoints. At the end of the passage was a small access panel. Aveline worked it open carefully, revealing a dimly lit room beyond. She peered through, then gestured for Liam to look. The observation room was empty of personnel, but filled with monitoring equipment screens displaying vital signs, brain activity, blood chemistry. Through a large window, Liam could see into the isolation chamber itself. His breath caught painfully in his throat. Maya lay on a hospital bed connected to various monitors and 4 lines. She appeared to be unconscious, her small form dwarfed by the medical equipment surrounding her. Mrs. Chun sat beside her, clearly distressed but physically unharmed, holding Maya's hand and speaking to her softly. A single doctor worked at a console, his back to the observation window. That's Dr. Mercer, Aveline whispered. He was one of the lead researchers at Chimera 18 years ago. He personally supervised my brother's treatment. The cold fury in her voice was matched by the calculated precision of her movements as she eased herself through the access panel. Liam followed, his heart pounding so loudly he was certain it would give them away. The observation room was separated from the isolation chamber by a thick glass partition and an airlock-style entry system. A security panel beside the door required both keycard access and biometric verification. How do we get past that? Liam whispered. Aveline removed the small black case from her jacket, opening it to reveal what looked like a thin metal credit card and a small vial of clear liquid. Universal access prototype, she explained, removing the card. It mimics any RFID signal it's exposed to. And this, she held up the vial, is a synthetic fingerprint film. My brother designed both after our escape. He's never fully trusted electronic security since. She applied the liquid to her fingertips, creating a nearly invisible film. I obtained Dr. Mercer's biometrics from our corporate espionage division 3 months ago. We've been building a case against him separately. Liam stared at her. The level of preparation, the resources she'd marshaled, the years of planning, it was staggering. This wasn't just corporate warfare. It was a personal crusade executed with military precision. You've been planning this for a long time, he said softly. 18 years, 2 months and 14 days, she replied without looking up, her tone matter of fact. But I never had a way inside until tonight, until you. Before Liam could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red emergency lights pulsed along the corridors. Security breach at main entrance, announced a mechanical voice over the intercom. All personnel initiate Protocol Omega. Repeat, Protocol Omega is now active. In the isolation chamber, Dr. Mercer's head snapped up. He moved quickly to a wall-mounted phone, speaking urgently into the receiver while checking monitors. Wallace's team must have breached the perimeter, Aveline said. We need to move now before they evacuate Maya. She approached the security panel, sliding the universal access card through the reader. The light blinked from red to yellow partial authorization. She pressed her treated fingertip to the biometric scanner, holding her breath. After a tense moment, the light turned green. The airlock door hissed open. Inside the isolation chamber, Dr. Mercer spun around at the sound of the airlock activating. His eyes widened in shock as he recognized Aveline. You, he gasped. Hello, Richard. Aveline replied, her voice glacier cold. It's been a long time. How did you? He glanced frantically at the monitors, then at Maya. This is a restricted area. You have no authority here. I have every authority, Aveline countered, advancing toward him. The FBI is currently seizing all Northcrest assets and records. Your colleagues are being arrested as we speak. It's over, Richard, Doctor. Mercer's shock gave way to calculation. You don't understand what's happening here. This child, her genetic profile is unique. The potential applications of NCP-247 with her specific mutation could revolutionize neural regeneration. We're talking about curing degenerative diseases, paralysis, even brain damage. At what cost? Liam demanded, moving past Aveline to Maya's bedside. Miss Chun looked up at him with relief and terror mingled on her face. I'm so sorry, she whispered. They said they were from the hospital. They had ID badges and they knew about Maya's condition. It's not your fault, Liam assured her, turning his attention to Maya. What have you done to her? Nothing permanent, Doctor, Mercer insisted, backing away as Liam advanced on it. A mild sedative, preliminary blood work. We were just beginning the initial assessment. The full protocol wouldn't have begun until you had her safely hidden in your offshore facility. Aveline cut in. Like the other children who disappeared from your trials? Dr. Mercer's expression hardened. You always were a problem, Aveline. Your father warned us about your stubborn streak. Some things are bigger than individual lives. Surely the CEO of Langford Industries understands that concept. The difference is consent, Aveline replied. These children can't consent to being your lab rats. Liam was checking Maya's vital signs on the monitors. Her pulse is elevated but stable. Respiratory function normal. He started carefully removing the monitoring electrodes. We need to get her out of here now, Doctor. Mercer moved suddenly toward an emergency button on the wall, but Aveline was faster. She grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back with surprising strength. I spent 3 years in that bed, she hissed in his ear. 3 years while you and your colleagues treated me like a laboratory specimen. Did you really think I wouldn't learn how to fight back? The alarms grew more insistent, joined now by the sound of shouting and running footsteps in the corridor outside. We need to move, Liam urged, lifting Maya gently into his arms. She stirred slightly but didn't wake, her head lolling against his shoulder. Mars. Chun gathered Maya's personal items, a small backpack, a worn stuffed dinosaur. There's an emergency exit through the decontamination chamber, Aveline said, still restraining Dr. Mercer. It leads directly to the loading dock. You'll never make it, Doctor, Mercer sneered. The facility is locked down. Every exit is sealed and guarded. Not every exit, Aveline countered, a cold smile playing at the corners of her mouth. You forgot who designed your security system. She turned to Liam. Go. I'll be right behind you. What are you gonna do? Liam asked, hesitating at the decontamination chamber entrance. Ensuring he can't follow us, she nodded toward Dr. Mercer, and collecting one final piece of evidence, Liam hesitated only a moment longer before carrying Maya through the decontamination chamber, Mrs. Chun following closely behind. The chamber was a sterile, white-tiled room with automated shower heads mounted in the ceiling and walls. Fortunately, the evacuation protocols had disabled the standard decontamination sequence. Through the exit on the far side, they found themselves in a utilitarian corridor leading toward the loading dock. The facility's alarm system continued to wail, but the sounds of conflict seemed concentrated at the main entrance. Wallace's team creating a diversion that was proving more effective than they'd hoped. Cradling Maya against his chest, Liam paused at a junction, uncertain which way to proceed. This way, Mrs. Chun said suddenly, pointing left. I saw the loading area when they brought us in. They moved as quickly as Liam could manage while carrying Maya, whose slight weight felt impossibly precious in his arm. Her breathing remained steady, her face peaceful, despite the chaos erupting around them. The medication they'd given her appeared to be a simple sedative, not unlike those used for routine medical procedures. Small mercy. Chun led them through a maze of corridors, her normally gentle demeanor replaced by a surprising determination. I memorized the route, she explained, catching Liam's questioning glance. When they brought us here, I counted doors, noted signs. I knew you'd come for her. Thank you, Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. They reached a set of double doors marked Loading Bay C. Beyond them, they could see the cavernous space of the loading dock, illuminated by emergency lighting. 2 delivery trucks were parked at the bay's engines running part of the evacuation protocol. No doubt. Where's Aveline? Mrs. Chun whispered, looking back the way they'd come. As if in answer, the lights throughout the facility flickered once, twice, then failed completely. For several seconds, they stood in absolute darkness before the emergency generators kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. That would be Aveline, Liam said with grim satisfaction. They pushed through the doors onto the loading dock just as Aveline emerged from another entrance. Her composed appearance somewhat disrupted now, hair falling loose from its chignon, a small cut above her eyebrow leaving a thin trail of blood down her temple. Power grid compromised, she announced, slightly breathless. Their backup systems will be operating at minimum capacity, which means reduced security, Liam finished. She nodded, her eyes softening as they fell on Maya in his arms. How is she? Still unconscious, but stable. What did you do to Mercer? Locked him in his own isolation chamber. Cold smile played at her lips. The same one he kept my brother in for 9 months. Poetic, don't you think? Before Liam could respond, the sharp report of gunfire echoed from somewhere inside the facility. They both tensed. Wallace's team should have secured the loading area, Aveline said, checking her phone. No signal. They must be jamming communications. Liam glanced at the idling delivery trucks. We need transportation. Those will be tracked immediately, Aveline countered. But there should be staff vehicles in the east lot. Mrs. Chun pointed toward a small door in the corner of the loading bay. Service exit. I saw it when they brought us in. The exit led to a narrow passage and then to a small parking area where several nondescript sedans and SUVs were parked, the personal vehicles of Blackwater staff. Most would have electronic security, but one older model caught Liam's eye. That one, he nodded toward a weathered blue sedan. Older ignition system. I can start it. Aveline raised an eyebrow. Skills from your misspent youth? Despite the circumstances, Liam managed a tired smile. Something like that. Maya stirred in his arms, making a small sound of distress. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. We need to hurry, Mrs. Chun urged, glancing nervously back toward the facility. Aveline moved ahead, checking for security personnel before motioning them forward. The parking area was deserted, everyone presumably occupied with the breach at the main entrance. The sedan's door was unlocked. A stroke of luck. Liam carefully transferred Maya to Mrs. Chun's arms while he worked on hot wiring the ignition. Years ago, before Maya was born, he'd learned certain skills out of necessity, skills he'd hoped never to use again, but now proved invaluable. The engine sputtered to life just as the facility's external lights blazed on, flooding the parking area with harsh illumination. In the distance, they could hear shouting, the sound of running feet. Get in, Liam urged, taking Maya back from Mrs. Chun and sliding into the back seat with her. Mrs. Chun followed while Aveline took the driver's seat. You drive? Liam asked, surprised. Better than you hotwire cars, she replied, throwing the sedan into reverse. They peeled out of the parking space just as two security guards emerged from a side entrance, weapons drawn. Aveline executed a perfect J-turn, then accelerated toward the service road that would take them away from the facility. Gunshots rang out behind them, but they were already beyond effective range, the sedan bouncing down the gravel road toward the highway. Wallace and his team? Liam asked. Aveline checked the rearview mirror. They'll extract when they've completed their mission. They're not just creating a diversion, they're securing evidence. Evidence of what, exactly? She met his gaze briefly in the mirror. Everything. The clinical trials, the military applications, the offshore operations. Northcrest isn't just developing a pharmaceutical, they're weaponizing how? Mrs. Chun asked, her arm protectively around Maya. NCP-247 was designed to repair neural pathways, Aveline explained, her voice clinically detached. But Northcrest discovered it could also be modified to do the opposite, to selectively degrade specific neural functions while leaving others intact. Imagine a weapon that could incapacitate enemy forces by inducing temporary paralysis, or targeted memory loss, or specific behavioral change, all without conventional force. Liam looked down at Maya, sleeping peacefully against his chest. And children with neuromuscular disorders made perfect test subjects. Their neuroplasticity makes them ideal for studying both regenerative and degenerative applications, Aveline confirmed. Ethically monstrous but scientifically sound. They drove in silence for several minutes, the lights of the Blackwater facility receding in the distance. The storm had passed, leaving the night sky clear and star-filled. Maya's breathing had deepened into natural sleep, the sedative wearing off gradually. Where are we going? Mrs. Chun finally asked. Somewhere safe, Aveline replied. A property owned by a Langford Shell Corporation. No connection to me on paper. Liam's phone suddenly buzzed, signal restored now that they were beyond the facility's jamming radius. It was a text from Wallace. Extraction complete. Evidence secured. FBI on site. Rendezvous at Safe House. Aveline nodded with satisfaction when he showed her the message. It's over then. Northcrest is finished. But the people behind it? Liam questioned. Some will escape prosecution, others won't. But the research itself, the data, the formulas, that's been contained. Maya stirred again, her eyes finally blinking open. She looked confused, then frightened, then relieved as she recognized Liam. Daddy. Her voice was small and raspy. I'm here, sweet pea, he soothed, holding her close. You're safe now. The doctors ... single quote, she began. They're gone. You don't have to worry about them anymore. She nodded sleepily, accepting his assurance with the simple trust of childhood. My arms feel funny. That's just medicine they gave you to help you sleep, Mrs. Chun explained gently. It will wear off soon. Maya's gaze drifted to Aveline, visible in the driver's seat. Who's that? That's Ems, Langford, Liam answered. She helped me find you. Maya studied Aveline's reflection in the rearview mirror. She looks like a superhero. A startled laugh escaped Aveline, perhaps the first genuine expression of mirth Liam had heard from her. Not quite, Maya. Just someone who knows what it's like to be scared. Maya seemed to consider this with grave seriousness. Did bad people try to take you too? Aveline's eyes met Liam's in the mirror, a silent exchange passing between them. How much to share? How to frame the night's events for an 8-year-old who'd already experienced too much trauma? Something like that, Aveline said finally. A long time ago, but like your dad, I had people people who helped me get away. This seemed to satisfy Maya, who nodded and nestled closer to Liam. Are we going home? Soon, he promised, though he wondered if they could ever truly go home again. Northcrest had been exposed, but the ripples from tonight would continue to spread. Their lives had been irrevocably altered. As if reading his thoughts, Aveline spoke. I have a medical team waiting at the safe house. They'll make sure Maya's okay, that there are no lasting effects from whatever Mercer might have administered. And after that? Liam asked. After that, you have choices, Aveline replied. Witness protection if you want it, or a new start somewhere else, anywhere in the world. Langford Industries has facilities globally. There would be a position for you, school for Maya, the best medical care. Liam looked down at his daughter, already drifting back to sleep, secure in the knowledge that her father had found her, had kept his promise to always protect her. Why would you do that for us? He asked. Aveline was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the dark road ahead. 18 years ago, I made a promise to myself that if I ever found another child in those circumstances, I wouldn't just rescue them, I'd make sure they had what I didn't, a future without fear. The weight of her words settled between an unspoken understanding of shared trauma and resilience. Maya shifted in Liam's arms, her breathing deep and even. Whatever decision they made about the future would wait until morning. For now, it was enough that she was safe, that they had survived the night's crucible. 3 months later, the city sparkled under a crisp autumn sun, the air carrying just enough chill to hint at the coming winter. Aveline Langford stood at the window of her executive suite at Langford Tower, watching the afternoon light play across the urban landscape. The view was familiar, but her perspective had shifted irrevocably. On her desk, newspapers and financial journals told the story of Northcrest Pharmaceuticals' spectacular implosion. Frederick Northcrest and Victor Hargrove were awaiting trial on multiple federal charges, their assets frozen, their reputations destroyed. The evidence recovered from Blackwater had exposed a conspiracy that extended into government contracts, defense applications, and international bioweapons research. The ripples continued to spread, touching politicians, military officials, and corporate executives worldwide. Langford Industries had emerged unscathed, its stock soaring as Aveline positioned the company as a champion of ethical pharmaceutical research. The merger that had occupied 18 months of her life had been replaced by something far more meaningful, the Langford Foundation for Pediatric Neurology, dedicated to developing genuine treatments for conditions like Maya's SMA. Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. Ms. Langford, your 4:30 appointment is here. Send them in, she replied, turning from the window. The door opened to reveal Maya Byrne, her dark hair now shaped into a stylish bob, her movement assisted by a sleek, lightweight exoskeleton, a prototype developed by Langford's medical technology division. Behind her came Liam, looking remarkably different in his tailored charcoal suit. Maya, right on time, Aveline smiled, her usually reserved demeanor soft. How was school today? Amazing, the girl exclaimed, moving with growing confidence in her new assistive device. We dissected a frog in science class, and I gotta show everyone how the nervous system works. She's quite the celebrity in the advanced science program, Liam added with pride, adjusting his tie a gesture that suggested he was still growing a custom wardrobe. The teachers can barely keep up with her question. The past 3 months had transformed their lives. After a brief period in a secure Langford property outside the city, they had emerged with new identities, not through witness protection, but through Aveline's more elegant salute. Liam Byrne, former night janitor, was now Liam Barrett, Director of Facilities Operations for Langford Industries' newly established research campus. His maintenance expertise had proven invaluable in designing labs with enhanced security and accessibility. Maya attended an exclusive private school with a renowned science program, her medical care overseen by specialists, hand-selected by Aveline herself. The experimental treatments developed by the Langford Foundation were showing promising results, slowing the progression of her conditions significantly. I have something for you, Maya announced, reaching into her backpack. She withdrew a carefully folded piece of paper and handed it to Aveline. It's my science project proposed. Dad said you might be able to help with the results. Aveline unfolded the paper to find a meticulously drawn diagram of what appeared to be a neural pathway, annotated in Maya's precise handwriting. Neural regeneration using targeted stem cell therapy, Aveline read aloud, her eyebrows rising. This is graduate-level research, Maya. The girl shrugged, though her proud smile belied the casual gesture. I've been reading some of the papers from your research team, Doctor. Lynn said I had good questions. Aveline exchanged a glance with Liam, equal parts amazement and concern. At 8 years old, Maya was already delving into the very science that might someday cure her condition. It's an excellent proposal, Aveline said carefully, but perhaps we could discuss scaling it appropriately for your grade level. Maybe focus on one specific aspect. Maya considered this, then nodded. I could just look at the initial stem cell cultivation process. That would be simpler to demonstrate. Perfect. And I'll make sure Dr. Lin knows you'll need access to the educational lab. Maya beamed, then turned to her father. Can I go see the new virtual reality system in the development lab? Dr. Patel said it was ready for testing. Single quotes. Liam nodded. 20 minutes, then we need to head home for dinner. After Maya had left, escorted by Aveline's assistant, a comfortable silence settled between the two adults. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, they had formed an unusual bond forged in crisis. strengthened by mutual respect and defined by a shared determination to protect Maya's future. The board approved the expansion of the pediatric research wing, Aveline said, moving to her desk. Construction begins next month. We'll be able to accommodate 30 more children in the treatment program. Children who would otherwise be on waiting lists for trials like Northcrest's, Liam observed, his expression somber. How many do you think they experimented on over the years? Hundreds, Aveline replied quietly. Maybe more. The offshore facilities are still being investigated. Some records were destroyed before the FBI could secure them, but it's over now because of what we did that night. Aveline's lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. Because you told a CEO not to get in her car. The memory hung between them, that rain-soaked evening when a janitor's desperate warning had altered the course of countless lives. In the months since, they had rarely spoken of those harrowing hours. The frantic drive to Northcrest, the discovery in the glove compartment, the infiltration of Blackwater, Maya's rescue. Some traumas were better left undisturbed. I've been meaning to ask you something, Liam said, breaking the reflective silence. That night when we first drove to Northcrest in my car, how did that document end up in my glove compartment? You never explained. Aveline looked momentarily surprised. I assumed you had figured it out. I've had theories, Liam admitted, but none of them made complete sense. She moved back to the window, gathering her thoughts. It was Dr. Mercer. According to his deposition, he'd been monitoring my investigation for months. When I scheduled the final meeting with Northcrest, he panicked. He was looking for a way to sabotage me without directly implicating himself. But how did he know about my car? He didn't. Not specifically. He had a team watching the building that night. When they saw me approaching your car instead of mine, they improvised. One of them had that document Ensign Mercer had been planning to destroy. They slipped it into your glove compartment while we were inside Northcrest, hoping I'd find it later and be distracted by a new lead. Liam shook his head, bemused. They couldn't have known we'd end up back at the car so soon. No, their plan backfired spectacularly. Aveline agreed. Instead of distracting me, they provided exactly the evidence we needed with Frederick's handwriting directly linking him to the cover-up. A lucky break. I don't believe in luck anymore, Aveline said softly. Not after everything that's happened. Outside, the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, the city's glass towers reflecting the spectacular light show. From this height, the world seemed ordered, predictable, controllable an illusion. Aveline no longer indulged. I have something for you, she said suddenly, reaching into her desk drawer. She withdrew a small box and handed it to Liam. Inside was a set of car keys with the Mercedes-Benz logo. Liam looked up, confused. What's this? The keys to your new company car, Aveline explained. As Director of Facilities Operations, you need appropriate transportation. It's the same model as the one they tried to sabotage that night. Completely redesigned safety systems, of course. Single quotes. Liam weighed the keys in his hand, clearly uncomfortable. Aveline, I appreciate the gesture, but this is too much. I'm still getting used to the salary and the apartment. A luxury car seems excessive? She finished for him, a rare hint of vulnerability crossing her feet. Perhaps. But it's not just about the position or appearances. It's about balance. Balance? 3 months ago, you offered me your car, your only real asset, to a complete stranger because you thought I was in danger. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes held an intensity that caught Liam off guard. You risked everything to help someone who, in your world, represented the very power structure that kept you working night shifts to afford your daughter's medical care. Liam started to protest, but Aveline raised a hand to stop him. Let me finish. That night changed both our lives, but the scales remain unbalanced. Me, then helped me complete a mission 18 years in the making. A company car is hardly adequate compensation, but it's a start. Liam studied the keys for a long moment, then looked up with a wry smile. You know, in my old neighborhood, this kind of car would be stripped for parts within an hour. Good thing you don't live there anymore, Aveline countered, matching his smile with her own. Besides, it has an excellent security system. My brother designed it himself. The tension broke and Liam pocketed the keys. Thank you. Not just for this, but for everything you've done for Maya. The treatments, the school, the opportunities. She has a future now that I could never have given her. She always had a future. Liam, you made sure of that the moment you decided to speak up in that parking garage. Aveline's expression turned reflective. Some people spend their entire lives accumulating power and wealth, only to discover too late that courage is the one resource they lack when it matters most. Maya returned then, chattering excitedly about the virtual reality system she'd tested. As they prepared to leave, Aveline walked them to the private elevator, maintaining the professional decorum that defined their public interactions. The research team meeting is at 10 a.m. tomorrow, she reminded Liam. Dr. Lin will present the latest trial results. We'll be there, Liam assured her, ushering Maya into the elevator. As the doors began to close, Maya suddenly held them open. Ms. Langford, Dad told me what really happened that night, how you helped save me from the bad doctors. Aveline crouched to the girl's eye level, momentarily abandoning her CEO posture. Your dad is the real hero of that story, Maya. I've just provided the transportation. Maya considered this with the solemn wisdom that sometimes made her seem far older than her years. Maybe, but Dad says sometimes heroes need heroes too. The elevator doors closed on Aveline's surprised expression, carrying Maya and Liam down to the executive garage where a gleaming black Mercedes now waited beside. Aveline's Audi 2 vehicles that symbolized how far they had come from that rain-soaked night when a desperate warning had changed everything. In the quiet of her office, Aveline returned to the window, watching as dusk settled over the city. Somewhere in the gathering darkness, the remnants of Northcrest's operation were still being dismantled. The chapter wasn't fully closed, but a new one had definitely begun. Her phone buzzed with a message from Wallace. Final Blackwater server decryption complete. You'll want to see this. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles in her long crusade, but tonight, for the first time in 18 years, Aveline Langford allowed herself to feel something that had eluded her since childhood. Peace.